Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this chit chat with Beyond Wellness, a place where we discuss everything mental health. I am your host, Neela Phillip, licensed clinical community psychologist, and today we have such a pertinent topic to be discussed. It is the month of June, known as Mental Health Awareness Month for men. And so this month, men take center stage. Here at Beyond Wellness, and on many other platforms. So get ready. When we come back from the break, I'm going to introduce a very esteemed panel here to discuss the topic mental health and its challenges through the eyes of Caribbean men and the health practitioners that serve them. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. On our panel today, we have Jeverson Ramirez, who is a recording artist, and I must say he's also a holder of a Bachelor of Science degree in psychology. Then we have Nerissa Bethel, who is a licensed clinical community psychologist, and Desiree Nicholas, who is a licensed clinical social worker and the founder of Caricope Wellness Alliance, an organization that I have the privilege of working with. Joining us later is Daryl Bernard, who is an educator and motivator. Guys, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's really, really good to have such great minds convening to talk on such a pertinent topic. And just for the persons that are joining us now, I'm going to just reiterate what the topic is. It's mental health and its challenges through the eyes of Caribbean men and the practitioners that serve them. And so today we're going to get right into a discussion. And so our first question is really towards Jeverson, a man on our panel. And the question in its essence speaks to what drives the lack of motivation on the part of men in the Caribbean to seek help. We know that health practitioners consistently suggest that the onset of prevention of both mental health and physical health issues are influenced by the actions of individuals. So again, what drives the lack of motivation on the part of men to seek help, Jeverson, from your perspective?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to be a part of this esteemed panel. I generally do not get the chance or the opportunity to talk about stuff because people just see that I'm a singer and I could sing and I'm a recording artist, blah blah blah.
Right.
But I I think there's a number of things, and I guess we'll get deeper into the conversation as we go along. But I mean, first of all, there's that stigma attached to mental health in itself. Well, in the Caribbean, my headspace and how I grew up, and just and then asking for help with mental health, it could be
Mm-hmm.
seen as a sign of weakness. It could be seen as, well, I can't handle my stuff, and you want to come across as this masculine man that fits into these masculine norms, and you want to be a hero in every situation because we've looked at our dads try to be the hero in every situation. So I mean, things along that line in my head, to me, causes or kind of makes way for us to just be like, you know what, I'm going to deal with this on my own. I'm going to handle this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need that. I don't need that help. I don't need that. I don't need that. What is that? What is even that? Like what, mental? Nah, 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 nah. But I think those are some of the things.
All right. Thank you for that contribution. I think you've made some really great points there, but I do want to hear from Daryl, who's just joining us on this same question, especially maybe because he didn't hear all of your responses. I want to see if you guys are convening on the same points. All right. So, Daryl, the same question to you. what drives the lack of motivation on the part of men to seek help? Caribbean men, men that you know, men that you've uh, spoken with, lived with, done things with. What drives the lack of motivation on their part, on your part, to seek help?
I could bet. Well, first of all, let me just say good morning to one another, right? And for a million reasons, I like to start meetings by saying the devil is a liar, right? I'm here today and I'm happy to be here, right? At this moment,
Yes.
I mean, you guys know why, right? And in stepping into the meeting, I could have bet my last dollar that this is the question that Jefferson was answering, because I do believe as men we do share the same sentiment as it relates to that lack of motivation for us as men to speak out, more or less, or to seek mental health. And it all, from my experience, I would say, there is a societal stigma. There is that sense of masculinity that speaks to being that brave soldier, that warrior, that powerful individual that does not need help, that should not express frustration, should not express a sense of vulnerability, should not ask for advice and so forth. And if you, for whatever reason, begin to be that individual that seeks assistance in those instances, you are, whether it is by society or even by yourself, because it's so strong, we do it by ourselves, you are labeling yourself as a weak man or a half-breed man or a man without backbone, as society would say it. And because of that, we would tend to keep these emotions inside. We will tend to deal with our problem ourselves. And I could speak to myself. I've done it. Is recently, Miss Philip, honestly, is recently when I started to hear you speaking of mental health and so forth and the importance of speaking out, I actually began speaking out myself. So I've gone through a vast period of my life thinking to myself that there are certain things that men should not speak about and we should just hold it. We have to just grind it out and we have to do what we have to do. So I think the biggest factor, the biggest contributing factor to that is the fact that we have this false belief that as man, mental health and seeking and that sense of vulnerability, emotional expression should not be on our part. And that is the biggest downfall.
Definitely. Thank you guys, Jefferson and Daryl, for sharing those points. I mean, you guys are touching some of my heartstrings because I think you're making points that can resonate with so many men. I've heard it so many times. I'm a man. They tell you man up. You ain't supposed to cry. Uh, just find a solution. That's the kind of attitude that we have towards men in terms of their mental health and seeking help. But I want to insert this point here that you are emotional beings. Men that are looking on, you're emotional beings too. And so emotional support is also here for you. And so, as I think you guys also kind of touched on the second point that we want to get into, which is looking at mental health from the perspective of the way that we were socialized, from a cultural context, the idiosyncrasies of our specific population, the Caribbean population. So, anecdotally, I would like to hear from all of you on the panel. What aspects of our culture, our socialization, do you think have contributed to the behaviors that Jefferson mentioned, that Daryl mentioned, and maybe some that both Desiree and Nerissa can add to what you guys have already mentioned? And so, Nerissa, we'll start with you and then we'll go to Desiree before we hear from our guys again.
Okay, sure. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks again, Neela, for having me here. It's a pleasure.
You're welcome.
Okay, I would say that within our Caribbean context, our history, right, plays a very, very critical part in the help-seeking behaviors or lack thereof that our Caribbean men, show. So if we go back as far as like slavery, right, and the socialization of slavery and the plantation system that existed back then, I think it plays a big part in the presentation we see in our Caribbean men today. All right.
Yeah.
So we had some researchers by the name of Hillard and Akbar within Hickling's text on Caribbean psychology, the perspective of Caribbean psychology. And they highlighted some very critical points. And the point is that there was a big diseducation and miseducation of Caribbean people as well as American slaves, right? Back in slavery days. So miseducation in the sense that slaves were not allowed the freedom to learn or to educate themselves, and miseducation in terms of not being given the opportunity to kind of hold on to their own values, right? So almost like being socialized and imperialized with the views of their imperializers. So this idea of accepting colonial views of life, colonial views of reasoning, colonial views of community and religion. So what we ended up with was a social dynamic whereby the values and the morals that Caribbean men, American men, American slaves as a whole, right, ended up being stripped of their own identities, their own practices, their own social beliefs, because they were torn between what they were being miseducated with in terms of the colonial views versus what they were born and bred with. It was looked at almost as like less than. So if we trickle it down to our men in particular, what we find is that our Black men were valued for their strength, their physical ability, what they could do, what could they carry,
Yes.
right? And they ended up being demoralized in terms of their roles as husbands and fathers, because in some cases, they would witness their wives or their girlfriends being totally demoralized, witnessing them being raped, witnessing them being abused, and they couldn't do anything about it. So you find that we ended up, well, our men, our Caribbean men in particular, ended up almost accepting this position of like a learned helplessness, right? And a lack of trust in the systems in which they were being brought up, right? So a deep, deep sense of lack of trust is almost like, how could I seek help from a system that's totally tearing me down? How could I seek help from a system that's totally degrading me? All I could do is really rely on myself. So I think history has a very large
Mm-hmm.
play in how our Caribbean men present today.
That's a really deep point. And just to summarize what Narissa just mentioned, this is a deep-seated issue. It's not just a today thing. This didn't happen yesterday.
Mhm.
We can trace some of the behaviors that our men still hold on to, men still portray in our Caribbean context, all the way back to colonialism, slavery. And I mean, it's time for us to break some of uh, those shackles
Mhm.
that have shaped the culture that we now hold on to. And so we're hoping that with this discussion that we can at least make a dent in doing so. And so Desiree, tell us what you think.
Thank you so much for having me. I really
You're welcome.
appreciate Narissa's perspective coming from the history side of things. And I'd like to take us a little further to present day because understanding the history is really, really good, right? And now that we understand the history, we need to think about, okay, in present day, we're not necessarily still under slavery times, but still, how is it being reinforced in our culture? How are some of these perspectives still being reinforced? And when you think about mental health, it's really about coping. And like Neela, you would have said earlier, men are emotional beings as well, right? They're human beings. And so I know that they're very aware of that, but the difference is how do we cope, right? And what is modeled for us in coping. And in the Caribbean, we know alcohol is a huge part of our tradition and our culture, right? It's in the way we celebrate, it's in our rituals, it's in the way we mourn. So my mom's family is from Caricope. Caricope is a very, very traditional island. They hold on to a lot of their historical norms, right? And when you're burying the dead, anything that they're doing, you see they pour out some alcohol and everyone takes a sip, right? That is a huge part of our culture, and it's become the way that men can relate to each other, right? So you'll find that if someone is going through a hard time, it's easier to just go to the bottle, go to the rum shop, and either drink your feelings or get the courage to then speak after you drink, right?
Yeah.
And so we have some unhealthy ways that we are coping that is really causing a lot of additional harm to us. And embracing mental health and healthy coping is really about learning healthier ways to open up that may not involve a substance per se.
Awesome. I really like the perspectives that you guys have brought to this discussion. We went all the way back to colonialism and to present day, looking at how our men cope. And Desiree, I just want to say, I mean, I knew this, but hearing it again from your perspective brought so much more light to it. In the Caribbean, and if I just look at our local context, Grenada, our men in particular, our men use alcohol as their mask, as their therapy, as their way of getting through problems. And in so doing, we're perpetuating this cycle of men not being able to speak up because they feel like they've gotten their release through the use of alcohol. So I'd love to hear what Jeverson and Daryl has to say briefly on this.
Daryl, you can go.
And thank you very much, sir. Right. I must say that Miss Desiree and Miss Bethel, you guys presented some wonderful, some profound, right? Some profound points with the angle that you all took. And I'm just gonna add to your both, right, to the arguments that you guys presented. Now, it's a topic that I love, and I'm going to use one of the topics that I usually teach. I'm a social studies teacher, so I'm going to use one of the topics that I usually teach to just show that connection. And that topic is the role of family members within Caribbean societies, right? We know that role, you can look at role traditionally and contemporary. Traditionally, you know that the men were designed to have certain roles. So traditionally, they would tell you the men are to be the providers. Traditionally, men are to be the protectors. Traditionally, men are to be the disciplinarians. And traditionally, they would tell you women have to be the nurturer, women have to be the cooks and the housekeepers and so forth. But what has happened, there has been some factors contributing to the change, to the changes in those roles. So we have things like education coming into play. Then we have things like technology coming into play. We have the whole idea of industrialization coming into play. And what all of these things would have done, it would have empowered women to come out of that home setting that they would have been placed in, that barrel that they would have been placed in, and it gives them the opportunity to experience the world now, the world of opportunities. Now, with that, the system would have also provided certain advantages towards women. So you have the women movement, the women rights, women laws, all of those things coming into play. And now we need to jump across to the effects. So apart from the effects, like you have the little identity crisis and you have the role changes and role conflict, you have a very big one coming in, which is the one that you both mentioned, which is the marginalization of the male in society, right? So you have the males now are feeling belittled. The males now are feeling like, wow, we are losing our value, we are losing our substance in society because the women are now taking over the biggest jobs. Women are occupying now. Women are becoming our bosses. You know, the women that we would have once been able to tell, hey, do this and do that, or so forth. Now they are the ones that are more or less commanding and demanding and dominating society. So we as men start feeling marginalized. And with that marginalization, now we have to ask ourselves, women already are being looked at as they are the powerhouse. The only thing that we have going for us right now as men is our backbone, that voice as us as being men. So and now you are trying to tell me that that one little powerhouse that I have, the voice of a man, you want me to come and dilute that and express that and say, hey, you know, I do have stress as well. Hey, you know, I do feel frustrated as well. hey, I do need some help as well. Hey, I'm going through this, and hey, I'm going through that. No, it's like we as men, and I'm telling you, we as men start feeling like that's the only thing we have going for us now. And you are asking us politely, whether it's all good deeds, all good intention, but you are asking us to give us that one thing that we have that make us identical, universally identical. And that is one of the factors that has been contributing to our reluctance towards this whole seeking mental health thing as well. So I think that has a connection, a deep connection as well. And I was so happy to share that as well. Yeah, and an intellectual discussion like this.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Daryl. I'd love to hear from Jefferson before I say anything.
I think it's definitely all of those things. I think it's the expectation. Well, I mean, society created an understanding of what, as you said, the roles are, and then now it's expected of the opposite sex for a man to be a certain way, and on top of a man feeling okay, well, maybe I don't have I don't want to ask for help because this I'm supposed to fit into this role that society's placed me in. There's also an expectation of me to fit into that role, and when you don't fit into that role, then it's even worse. It's even double because I'm myself feeling
Mm-hmm.
like maybe I failed society. Maybe I'm not man, and then on top of that, you're failing the opposite sex because you don't live up to that standard that you want you to live up to. So you have dual pressure, or just anybody you feel that pressure from. I do think that men has been in history books. We've been used as instruments of war, and then we come home, and then we have PTSD, and we have all these issues, and we're struggling to deal with all the things that happen up here. But then the same system that sent you to war wouldn't create a situation where you feel safe enough to share, yo, this happened to me out there, yo, I just saw a guy die out there
Mm-hmm.
in this worst way. How do we deal with that? Like, I mean, in Grenada, I'm not sure that our law enforcement has what's the word, therapists in the force. I'm not sure. I mean, I hope to God that they do, because I think, and I don't want to be wrong, but we have a lot of males in the service. So it again, it just shows like from a societal perspective, we don't really care about that. We don't really like value that. We do because women have we do for women, sorry, because women has, it's in their nature to share. It's in their nature to, confide in a girlfriend, confide in a sister, and confide in somebody. But it is so frowned upon, like from society, from, like, I mean, there's from one, there's pressure from the religion, there's pressure from society, there's pressure from everybody else around you, that you have to live up to this standard, that you have to be strong, you have to be this, you have to be that. And then we look at our dads. Our dads do the same thing. So I mean, I also want to, throw in that, I mean, nature nurture, we're being nurtured into this societal thing that he's already having an issue with. Imagine that. Like, he's having a problem with not being able to speak out. He has issues of his own that he just has to deal with and suck up. And then I'm looking at him, my dad, do all of that. I'm looking at him do it, and I'm watching as a child and as kids. We could see, like, you see, he's struggling with that. Like, he's not happy. Like, and you feel that energy from them because they're your parents. You live with them, and then you kind of just emulate that without even thinking twice, without trying to do anything different. Like, you just put yourself in that role because, one, I see my dad do it. He's been fine. Like, he's handled it. He's dealt with it. I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to continue this thing because this is just the way it works. The society doesn't create an opportunity for me to do it. This is what I came and met here. So I am just going to, like, all right, let's just keep it like that, you know. But I must say though that I think, like, just the fact that we're having this kind of conversation means that we're opening our eyes to that, and understanding that, as you said, men have feelings, men are emotional beings. Like, we do it. I just, I've been doing therapy for so long. I just understanding that I have to get there. Like, I have to do it, or else I'll be a mental and emotional wreck. And that's just from my understanding of being, of studying psychology for a little bit, as Neela said. or just living in the world that I think it can. I sat and thought to myself, yeah, this don't make no sense. I really need to talk to somebody. But that's just based on, as as Nerissa said, that education level. Like I was able to understand how psychology could help me, and that's, I guess, what made me go to therapy. But just generally, I see no outlet. I see no avenue created by the society or anybody for that matter.
Thank you, Jefferson and Daryl. You guys are making me so sad. It's eh, just listening to how passionate and the truth in all of the things that you guys have just said. Society has amplified the silence that men continue to drown in. Social pressure to conform reinforces the emotional suppression that we see in our men. And I want to say, based on the points that the both of you just made, that our attempt with mental health, our attempts with mental health and therapy is not to take away your voice, but to give you a voice or to strengthen that voice. Jefferson just mentioned, and I'm so happy that he did, that he mentioned that he goes to therapy. Guys, a man can go to therapy, and trust me, I'm sure Jefferson can reinforce this point that therapy is not a place where your voice is diminished, but it helps you to be more expressive. It gives you a voice if you didn't have one, and it helps to strengthen the voice that you already have. So, just to kind of sum up everything that Jefferson and Daryl said, I want to close off this point by saying, men, therapy gives you a voice. If anything, if you feel like you already have a voice and it's been portrayed in a light that therapy is going to take your voice from you, I want you to know that that's not the case. Therapies, if not give you a voice, is going to amplify the voice that you already have. Ladies, do you have anything to add before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, just to reinforce what you're saying, I'm getting a bit of an echo. Okay, it's gone. So in terms of therapy giving you a voice, I agree with that completely. And an example of that is sometimes you could be struggling with something or you have issues with certain things and you don't feel like you can speak up because you're afraid of how you would be seen. But it gives you a voice because you're in a space where someone who is impartial and not involved in your life can listen to you and help give you an unbiased perspective of the situation. And that can be empowering for a lot of people to then go back and speak to the person that they may have an issue with. Right. So that's what Nila is talking about when she says it's giving you a voice, because if you can share your perspective with one person and feel safe doing that, it empowers you to be able to do that with more people
Yep.
eventually.
Awesome. Guys, I think you've eaten the third point, and so we're moving on. I have one question for you, one last question that I would love to hear the male perspective on before we wrap up the first segment of the of of this entire series. And so the question to Jefferson and Daryl. And this question is coming from Nerissa, it's coming from Desiree, it's coming from me, it's coming from all the practitioners that work with men like you. Even with our best efforts as practitioners, we still have a large percent of Caribbean men who still do not seek help. Even if we advertise, and we're happy that our advertisements can help men like Daryl, who mentioned that, hearing mental health being spoken of has encouraged him to speak out more. But we still have so many men who ignore the call. They are struggling with issues. and refuse to speak out, refuse to seek help. As practitioners, we're asking for your insight as men. Why aren't our men seeking help, even if help is available?
I'm gonna just jump in. I think that it's well, first of all, I think thanks for offering the help. I think we must be grateful for help that's available because somebody like me has received help. So I must say, thanks to the people who offer help and make help available to men. Um, what was I gonna say? I think I lost it. But yeah, I'm it's going to take a while. It's going to take a little while because it's been so entrenched in us. It's been so like for all the factors we talked about earlier, like from a historical point of view, it's like from imagine the state of that man, who's been who sees his mate or his girlfriend or his partner being morally abused or just abused in any kind of way and still feeling powerless. That's an insane feeling. And just it being perpetuated and perpetuated and perpetuated throughout societies, throughout the rules, throughout the laws, throughout the societal norms, throughout the expectations from the opposite sex or and even other men. Um, it is going to take us a little while, and maybe we need to be a little bit more creative in how we offer the help, probably. Um,
Okay.
and I mean, you always get men in sports. You always get men playing sport. Men always play sports. Like we want to be active. We want to be around. Maybe that could be considered when people offer help for men. Um, but I think that's part of the reason because it's so entrenched. It's such a deep seated issue that we don't we that's not a thing. It's almost like I remember when ATMs came into to not ATMs no, but there was like a flow machine. Um, in town, and they just installed this machine, and people were outside like, "Yo, we don't want this thing, we don't want this thing, we don't want this thing. We're
Right.
fine with the way
Change.
things are. We're fine. We're going in the line. We're fine." But just because it's so entrenched, and this is the way we do, and we want to hold on to what we
Yes.
do, and there are so
Yes.
many things tell you that you have to hold on to it. So I think that's a massive, massive part to play. But to say that help, it should stop. We should continue to offer help. We should continue to try and find, as I said, creative ways so that they can get help. I remember, I mean, sorry to take so long, but Vibes Cartel just did an
It's okay.
interview on on one of this podcast, this famous podcast. There's rappers and music execs and people, superstars. And he was saying like, "Yo, I went to jail for how many years, and no, I'm grown, I'm a man now, and who can I talk to about my personal issues? Like, who can I really open up to? Who can I tell about things that are happening with me and my lady? Who can I tell about things that are happening to me personally?" And he was also advocating. So I'm kind of happy now, really happy to see, a star of his quality and caliber, bring up this type of issue, like with how there's a stigma surrounding men and how we ask for help and all of that. So, I mean, first of all, this conversation is mad timely, but yeah, it's going to take some time. But
Okay.
hopefully in the future we open up and we understand, and accept.
Yes. In our second segment, Jefferson, in the second episode of this series, I would really like to hear from you some of the creative ways you think that we can bring mental health to our men because it's so important. So I'm looking forward in the second segment, second episode, to hearing from you some of those creative ways. And guys, those of you looking on, if you have an idea, you can post it in our chat or you can send it to us at www.beyondwellness.info. Now, Daryl, we'd love to hear from you on this same point.
I love that question. And while Jefferson was answering, I was just there and I was just smiling because you started the question by saying, even though so many help has been provided, even though so many is being done, right? Even though so many is being done, why aren't men seeking help? And I think the
Yeah.
answer for that is very simple. The answer for that is simple. There is this 6 for 9 ideology. right?
Mhm.
Now, where you standing, you see it as a 6. But from where we are standing, we do not see it as a 6, we see it as a 9. In other words,
Okay.
from where you're standing, we see it as help. From where you're standing, you see it as help is being provided. I'm reaching out to you. And from where we're standing, we're seeing it as, hey, you're trying to make me weak. You're trying to make me vulnerable. You're trying to make me soft as a man. So I think
Soft.
so I think the reason goes way beyond just the help that is being provided. It goes back to all that we would have mentioned earlier, our mentality and our mindset and our perspective, and all this thing has to change before we as men holistically accept the whole idea of seeking help, right? If we do not understand that it is okay, if we do not understand that, hey, we are here for you and we are here to give a lesson air to you. We are here to create ways and to find innovative ways to help you solve your problem, to help you be a better man, to help you or to put you at a better place. If we do not understand that, it doesn't matter how much you give to us, we do not see what you are giving as something that would put us in a place where we are better, then we would not accept it. So I think that is the simple explanation for why we as men are not seeking and have not been able to accept holistically the help that has been provided for us. So I think that answers the question. Yeah?
Okay. So in essence, our definition of masculinity needs to change as a society, as a people, and as men,
That's it.
right? And so I'm hoping that in the second series, we're getting hotter, we're getting hotter. In the second series, the second episode of this series, I'm hoping that we can talk about how we change this definition, the kind of things that we need to do, the solutions that we can come up with to help our men to see therapy for what it is, to see mental health for what it is. And you see, the thing about it is, we're not just advocating here for therapy because every man may not need to go to therapy, but their mental health is still extremely important. You may not need to come and speak to a professional, but you can speak to somebody else, somebody that you trust. The issue right now is that our men are not speaking. They're holding on to all of the emotional baggage. You're an emotional being, as I said, and so it's necessary that you have an outlet. And we're hopeful that, as Desiree mentioned, who had to leave and will be back for the second episode, we're hoping that the outlet is not a drink, meeting the guys at the bar, but having more sober conversations that help to change the definition of masculinity and transform the way our men view mental health and mental health support. So, guys, we're going to wrap up this first segment, but I do want to give credit to the book, A Caribbean Psychology. This is where we gleaned quite a bit of the questions that form the base of our discussion today. And so I want to give credit to this book that was edited by Jaipaul, Roopnarine, and Chadee. And so we just want to give credit to where credit is due. And so, guys, I want to say thank you for joining us for this first segment. And catch us next week. And we'll have the second episode ready for you. Share this first episode. Send us your comments. Let us know how we can improve. Let us know what questions you would love to hear answered in our second segment. And we'll definitely look into ensuring that these questions are answered. Narissa, Jeverson, Daryl, Desiree, thank you so much for joining us. And remember, our topic was mental health and its challenges through the eyes of Caribbean men and health practitioners. And so in our second segment, we continue the conversation surrounding our men and their mental health. Guys, it's all about you. You take center stage for the entire month. And so stay with us and we'll be right back with the next episode.